Al McFarlane.
Good morning, I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane, broadcasting today from North Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Urban League. We invite you to be a part of our broadcast here at the Glover Sudduth Center for Community and Neighborhood Economic Development. We're glad to be here, and to focus today is on the president's stimulus package, the economy, the nation, the world. All are concerned about where we're going financially, and there's no exception. We hope that Minnesota organizes itself so that we both play a part in understanding the stimulus dollars and get our share. Well, I want to talk about what that means. First of all, I'm pleased to have one of the legendary leaders and thinkers in our community, Mahmoud el-Kati, Professor Mahmoud el-Kati, to join me talking about observations in general about the economy from the ground level. How does our community look at what's happening in the political and financial arena? How does it affect us, and where do we see our interests? Also joining the conversation, Reverend Devin Miller, an elder in the Church of God in Christ and a member of the famous God Squad in St. Paul. Reverend Miller, thank you for being here as well.
Good to be here.
But first, Mahmoud, how does our community get our hands around, our minds around the impending perilous economic environment?
Well, I'm going to say first what the Chinese always say. These are interesting times, which means in some ways it's like other times. We're faced with new challenges, and a culture does what is demanded of it. I think that African people have this view, and this is vantage point at Richard Wright called the frog's eye view. We could always see some of this, even if we didn't clearly understand, the big macroeconomic reality. African people have been a part and parcel of the economic history of America, creating its original social wealth. I think every economist knows that, whether they acknowledge it or not, that we're the source of the original wealth capital of the United States of America. I think it's another challenge for us. It's not going to work for us in the way that it worked for other people. They said, well, there's 8% unemployment for America at large. It's close to double that right now for black people, maybe 13, 14, 15%. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets worse for us. But we can handle it. This is my point.
Reverend Miller, let me ask you to jump in here. You're focused on challenging people in St. Paul in particular to look at the impact of this economy on our community, on small businesses in particular. How does it look? What are you hearing on the street?
Well, I think a lot of the small businesses are really concerned about is there room in the stimulus package for them? I was in a meeting just last week and talking with some of the area CDC directors, Community Development Corporation directors, and one of the things that he spoke with me about, excuse me, is the fact that a lot of them are trying to go through the stimulus package and trying to find what's in it for the small business.
What does that mean?
And are there federal dollars that they can apply for through grants to improve their business? Is there work as far as they can subcontract for some of the construction that's going on or will be going on for our roads and for our infrastructure, because a lot of the stimulus package is going to be dealing with that. The whole green movement, what does it mean for the small business? And so what we're trying to do in St. Paul is really ask the question of one, how are you feeling about what's going on in this economic downturn? Are you prepared as an organization or as a business to deal with it, and what are you doing to prepare yourself to get in line for some of these federal dollars that will be coming to Minnesota?
And you mentioned the original wealth, understanding the original source of wealth for this country, Mahmoud el-Kati.
Yes, sir.
How do we use knowledge of the historic economic factor that Africans have been to the Western and world economy? How do we leverage that to understanding and developing a philosophy and strategy for advancement?
Well, I think we need to take another look at our notes. It's always good uh, to review where you've been and so forth. There are always lessons in our past that we can use. I think the major problem facing black people in this country is to reassess our values about what it is that we want in terms of being the best human beings we can be. I don't think, as important as money is, that it's the be-all and end-all of life. I think it's part and parcel. I mean, you need it to get through life. We need to talk about what that means to us. Well, we're developing an affluent class of African people, which makes me nervous because they think just like the previous class of people who've gone there, and that it's kind of mindless pursuit of wealth. And this thing might have happened for a good reason. I think that some of the older people in our background would talk about this being a marvelous opportunity to recreate. And I think Obama sees that when talking about remaking America. He's a sort of a cipher in that regard. I think that that's what we need to do. That's the biggest question for me, is about values. If you're going to imitate these people who've gotten us into this trouble, we need not pursue this route. I think that black people's experience as an enslaved population, as a caste system for most of our existence in this country, it ought to mean something in terms of taking a leap with respect to what it means to be a human being. You know, everybody wants to enjoy some of the comforts and luxuries of life. Why not? You know, it's in the world. But how much of that, you know, where do you want to go with this thing about making money? Which is incidentally a peculiar American term. It had never appeared in language until the United States came into being. Making money instead of shoes or other things that people used to barter for.
But is our approach making money, or is it making a living? Living.
Yeah, I think, yeah. It's
For the black side.
yeah,
anyway.
well, I was about making a life. I mean, it's been fairly easy for most people in this country to make a living, to earn a living. We're talking about making a life for ourselves, and that includes fundamental values about who you are as human beings. You know, now whether you want to reference that from some religious standpoint or some collection of human values that we've learned about ourselves as being human beings, we need to really go to school on that, you know, without any help from anybody in thinking about that, because I think we're in a position to understand as much as anybody about what it means to be a human being. We've seen the worst of it, the worst side of what it is, through this long nightmare of oppression. And in order to teach us some lessons about, you know, the good, trying to make the sense of the good take front and center for everybody. And we ought to stop, we ought to talk. If you believe we're equal, talk like we're equal, you know, to these other people who we're supposed to look up to. Some people have problems with that. I don't, you know, with the people, rich people don't mean anything to me, except that they're a human being with a beating heart and that kind of thing. They're like other people. They occupy a unique position in the country, and there's no reason for us to genuflect to them. All of this happened for a reason, and I think that it's giving us an opportunity to recreate America. There's been two great events, or three prior to this. The country coming into being during the so-called American Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, the Civil Rights Movement. These have been the critical issues which reshaped America and determined where we go from here. We're at this with all these confluences of forces which has come together, which nobody seems to quite understand. Even the people who know don't seem to know what's happening.
I'm pleased to add to this conversation the voice, the wisdom, the leadership of Louis King. Louis King is the president of Summit Academy, OIC. Good morning and welcome.
Well, thank you, sir.
Explain the concept, Higher Minnesota. Why is it important? And I want to have you explain the concept in the context of the comments made by Professor el-Kati. They suggest a history